So I think just really powerful backers that understand the Hyperliquid story and are coming out of the gates hot with $300 million of cash. And I think that it's the best story that Wall Street has ever heard in crypto. And we've seen
Mm.
some crazy shit happen when Wall Street gets a bite of crypto. You know, we saw Circle, we saw the ETH DATs, we saw MicroStrategy and Bitcoin. Like, what if all of a sudden you're going to start telling these Wall Street funds that there's a asset making $2 billion a year in free cash flow that trades at a 14 times multiple?
Before we begin, I want to give a shout out to our new sponsor, SocialValue, an AI-powered investment research terminal with prop indices and a high-performing DEX on its own chain. Join its third research competition for a $100,000 prize pool by submitting on socialvalue.com or on BidClub.io, with an additional chance to win another $2,000 every 2 weeks. But no, Keisan, thanks for coming on such short notice. I thought it's super relevant given how the whole USDH thing is happening with Hyperliquid. You spent a lot of time looking into it the past 5 days. Is that right?
USDH proposal? Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. I mean, it was a huge surprise to wake up to that on like Friday morning, I think it was,
Yeah.
um, and kind of hijacked my weekend and the last few nights. Um,
Uh,
it's been super interesting. I mean, it's pretty incredible, like the amount of um, governance that we've seen and kind of discussions and just the community rallying around and everyone debating and giving feedback and um, the various Twitter spaces and the speed at which like these huge institutions have come and put proposals into Hyperliquid.
yeah.
I don't know. A lot of us were calling it like this is the Hyperliquid Super Bowl, but that was pretty funny.
That's funny. No, I
And it really
remember.
felt like it.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
seeing a tweet from Vanek, like, or somebody like shitting on Vanek about like, oh, when Hype has this like hack thing, and they're like, oh, it's layer three, and like you should be really cautious. And now it's like we're all in into this thing. It's super interesting.
Right.
Um, but I mean, we kind of know the high level math. We're live too, by the way. But like we know the high
Yep.
level math, which is $5 billion, like 200 million of potential buybacks. But do you have a favorite in this game? Like, who do you think is the most sort of aligned with the future of hype?
Yeah, so I put out my kind of endorsement for native markets just a few hours ago. And that was after, many days of back and forth and of discussions with different people within the ecosystem and also reaching out to Max and kind of hearing his opinion on things. And um I saw some stuff. I think I forgot the guy from Dragonfly tweeted
Mm,
something about like how this was a farce and how it was like how it's been native markets since day one or something. And I think that's just pretty ridiculous. Like um I've been in these groups, I've been in these discussions. I myself was very torn. I still like am not. I still like don't have like I still don't think that there's like a clear winner, clear answer. They all have a lot of merits and like um I, it's taken a lot of discussion, honestly, and there's been a lot of interesting proposals. Initially, I thought Paxos was really kind of the most interesting just because of their distribution and like licenses. But the more I thought about it and the more that days went on, like um, it really just felt like going with a team that was like that was more Hyperliquid aligned from the beginning, felt right. Just kind of like gut feeling of like and you hear these different groups come on and talk about like Hyperliquid and like how they want to be part of the ecosystem and stuff like that. But like you just listen to the way they talk about it, and like it's kind of clear that they don't fully get it. And like some of the
mm,
references that they make, just kind of showed that like the that they're not fully intertwined with the ecosystem and don't understand the values. And I think a lot of it also is like competitiveness. Or sorry, like conflict of interest. All these other proposals have their own stable coins already. Like the Athena one, I think that one got like a lot of like hype and praise today. Like people were really, really excited about it. And I think they
yep.
put together a pretty incredible proposal, to be honest, like with what they had. And um, but to me, it's a misalignment of interest. I mean, they make their money from USDE being big, not from USDH. And I just think it's a little weird to have like a competitor be taking over this ticker. And then with the other ones, these are issuers of stablecoins. I don't really think that the the owner of the USDH ticker should be an issuer. I think it's better that they're agnostic and can go with whatever issuer, because if an issuer ever has issues, um, they can pivot and find different outlets and whatnot. Um, and like
And,
Paxos, this didn't really get talked about, but I thought this one was like an interesting thing. Um, Paxos ran BUSD to like $25 billion and
yeah.
um, or so in market cap, and then obviously got hit with like regulation. It was a different time, but they just abandoned it altogether. And it's like, what if what if that happens to one of these like issuers? They'll just abandon USDH. Whereas for me, native markets is like this is their one and only business. There's no abandoning in it. Like you know what I mean? This is everything for them. So I just thought building something from the ground up that was Hyperliquid aligned, that really resonated the most with me. And I think they put
Mm.
together a really good team for it as well.
And for those unfamiliar, what's the team like, and what's their proposal versus all the other ones out there?
So the team is Max Feege, who was previously the head of growth at Liquidity, and he's worked with a bunch of other protocols in the past couple of years, especially within the Hyperliquid ecosystem. He's advised and invested in multiple protocols, and he's just an early adopter to Hyperliquid. He's been around and has really understood the vision and the thesis this entire time. Um, and then the others are MC, who was the head of digital assets at BlackRock, and then the president and COO of Uniswap. Um, and during her time at Uniswap, I mean, Uniswap went cross-chain to a bunch of different chains and kind of maintained a dominant presence as a DEX on Ethereum and elsewhere, which a lot of people thought that maybe that someone else would come in and take over that in like a pretty commoditized DEX market, and then also battled like SEC through some serious like legal battles and challenges, and she got them through it, and Uniswap is still standing, and I think that she has a lot of respect for that, and also has a lot of like good um, network through for many years and all these things. And
Mm.
then the last one is Anish, who has he's got more of like a builder researcher background and was previously a researcher at Polychain, and I think he just has like really good insights into just blockchain design and all that, which is obviously super important here, especially if you're building something native to like a decentralized ecosystem.
Mm. But they have to kind of
And
start from scratch, right? Like it's not, you know, 12 months of shipping by say by say like Athena and whatnot.
yeah, I mean, they've been working on this for a few months before even knowing that there was going to be like any sort of proposal for this. Like Max's vision was always to build a Hyperliquid aligned stablecoin because he saw the value leakage from day one, and he knew that Hyperliquid, or I guess figured maybe they weren't going to build it themselves. So they've been working on this, and I think that two things are interesting here. And one is that like you're building this from the ground up, so you can choose how you build your company and what partners you build it with so that it like makes the most sense for this design. Whereas other companies are like beholden to their existing infrastructure. And then the other thing is stablecoin regulation has changed a lot in the last few years. I don't think it's going to be particularly hard to get Genius approval of stablecoins. So they're going to do things in a compliant way, and it's a fiat-backed stablecoin. It's like as cookie cutter as it gets. They're partnered with Stripe, one of the biggest, or Bridge through Stripe is one of the biggest like payments rails in the world or in the US. So I don't think it's like a big hurdle or as much as some of these like people are making it out to be with regards to licensing.
Mm. What would you feel like the Paxos and Athenas of the world would say about this team? Because I mean, they're obviously competing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like the value prop for all these other players is you get to scale immediately. Like the 5 billion TVL just moves to whatever they have, and
Yeah, it's
yeah,
unclear. I mean, it's
or if
not.
it's right now, it's just a ticker.
It's
But
Hyperliquid is
yeah,
they're saying it's just a ticker. That's what everyone is
hmm
saying.
yeah,
Personally, I think and hope that it's not. I would really love to see like perps denominated pairs shift towards this, and that really unlocks large value. Um, because at the end of the day, stablecoins are like they do have the moat and the barrier is liquidity. And that's really how you make a powerful stablecoin is kind of having focus on one. Obviously, it's great to have others included and get as many different, you know, platforms and people involved in distribution and whatnot. But as far as like value accrual back to hype, like if this ticker can be the one that wins, it's great. I think, I mean, we've heard on the spaces and stuff, Paxos will say that they're the better option because they have all this existing infrastructure and licensing, and they've done this for years. And that, you know, someone like Max or Native Markets doesn't have that. Athena will say that they have like advantage through DeFi and USDE yield, and they also have their like BlackRock Treasury, USDTB. Um, and there's a lot of merits to all these things. I just think that like there's also cons, and um, to me, the most important thing is to have a team that's fully aligned. And even if there's short-term hiccups or it takes longer to get settled, I prefer a team that in the long run, over the course of 5, 10 years, I know that I know where their heart lies and um, where their alignment is financially and otherwise.
Mm. Do you feel like it's important that because this team obviously has it probably launches a token, it has equity of its own, right? Do you feel like it's important that they get funding or it probably takes some capital to build out? Like they're gonna. Do you feel like they should be VC backed, or do you feel like Hyperliquid, ecosystem should invest in it in one
Well,
way or
so right
another?
now,
Yeah.
native markets, you're saying?
Yeah.
Um, they didn't raise any VC money.
Mm.
They're fully self-funded for now. Um, I mean, I think that it is important that the business does reap some rewards from the yield. I mean, I saw some of these other proposals that are like, we're going to give 100% back to the assistance fund, and
Yeah.
it's like that doesn't necessarily make a ton of sense either. You need to be aligned. You need to be incentivized to hire people for this project and to pay for growth and to um, pay for other things to build out the ecosystem and Rails and stuff like that. Um, and I thought Max's proposal made sense. 50% immutable to the assistance fund through smart contracts, so there's no questions asked there, and that's like top line revenue, or top line yield, whatever they called it. And then the other 50% is really a focus on building out liquidity and incentives to bolster the growth of stablecoin, which I think will be important in early days to try to get people to shift over from USDC or whatever other stables, and to create incentive programs for people to bridge from mainnet and wherever else to Hyperliquid. Because I think a lot of people talk about this $5 billion figure, but the vision I think is a lot more than that, and the potential is way higher. Um, so I
Mm.
think that there does need to be an emphasis on growing, on putting money towards growth. Um, yeah.
I see. So I guess what it comes down to in your mind is singular focus versus potential conflict of interest, and the native market team seems to have the caliber of talent to really pull this off. Because if it's like a random team, no matter how aligned they are, you'll not pick them. It's like they might not execute on the
Correct.
vision.
Yeah.
Mm.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
This is still an all-star team. Even if it's early
Mm.
days, they have the right people in place to execute.
What do you think happens afterwards, like the timeline and kind of the next steps?
Well, I think tomorrow is when tomorrow, so it's September 10th, is when validators have to decide their vote.
Yeah.
Um, and they state that on chain, and then people can shift stake weights accordingly. If they don't like who their validators are voting for, they can stake elsewhere.
Mm.
And then it's like I think there's like a couple of days to do that, and then a decision will be made. I guess within the next week, we'll know who won the ticker, and then I mean, Native Markets said that I think they mentioned Tuesday,
Mm.
but they said that they're going to launch their stablecoin next week, regardless of if they win the ticker or not. Um, and I mean, if it's someone else, maybe it takes them a little bit more time to go through their processes and whatnot. But I think deployment would happen regardless by anyone, hopefully pretty soon. I mean, there's a lot of eyes and attention on this and a lot of money going into these proposals and a lot of effort. So it's a huge opportunity. I think people will move fast.
And and but it's not necessary that USDH becomes the base pair and the collateral, right? There's like a lot of work that needs to happen before it does.
Definitely, it's not clear if that even will happen. I mean, we know that pairs will eventually go permissionless.
Mm.
Um, but in terms of like, I guess, well, maybe that's for spot deployments, but um, in terms of like perps pairs native to Hyperliquid, like, yeah, I don't know what that will look like. If there is a shift, it's probably takes some time to like move liquidity over and stuff. Um, I don't know. It's hard for me to speculate
Yeah.
that on that.
Yeah.
I do hope that it gets shifted because
Yeah.
otherwise we're just giving Circle $200 million a year, so for
Mm.
nothing. And that's kind of,
Yeah.
I think, the whole idea of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Okay. Um, is there anything else that kind of really excites you? I mean, this has taken the zeitgeist, the spotlight, but I mean, when I think about Hyperliquid itself, there's potentially a lot of perp markets being opened up by players who can reach the end audience and can open up their own sort of perp market and have a fee share. There's a potential sizable increase of TAM through stocks and at the perpification of stocks. There is the potential upside from them gaining share. Like I guess in your mind, when you underwrite the bull case and when you hold a position, um, what excites you the most on the horizon that moves the needle?
Yeah, I think, I mean, you mentioned a few of them. I think there's
Mm.
tons. At the end of the day, it boils down to team execution, honestly, and the conviction in this team. And like, that's why when this came out on Friday, it's like, I had some people asking, like, how does this change your thesis and stuff? I'm kind of just like, it doesn't change it at all. Like, this was baked in. These are the kinds of things you expect from this team. And that's why I hold such, large position and is because of my conviction in Jeff and the team. But
Mm.
in terms of things that I'm looking forward to, I mean, obviously this USDH and growing out this stable, I think there's $200 million lying on the floor per year of free cash flow, and then maybe five times that if this can grow to 25 billion over the next few years. So that's potentially like $1 billion in free cash flow just right there. And what's warranted on a stablecoin business these days? Circle traded at 300 times. Um, but we won't go there. Let's say 30x on the $1 billion in free cash flow. That's $30 billion of value creation right there, which is twice Hyperliquid's market cap right now circulating. So I mean, just right there, you have huge potential growth. I think that there's just native organic growth in perps market share that I very much look forward to, and I think is just going to keep happening. Um, we're trading at like, or Hyperliquid's doing about 5-6% of total volume versus centralized exchanges, and similar in open interest. I think that there's tons of white space there. I see no reason why we can't get to why we can't get to 20-30% over the next couple of years, and even higher later. It's just like there's
And
just so much potential growth long term that like is just going to keep filling over time based on getting new users and compounding all of these different factors. Um, and yeah,
how do
I
you
mean,
yeah, just on the numbers a little bit. Sorry to cut you off.
yeah, yeah,
When you cite the 200 million to $1 billion kind of free cash flow number, I'm guessing a big part of that value accrues to the token and or the equity of the stablecoin operator, um, right? And then a portion of it, like kind of manifests in buyback of the hype token. Like it's not the
yeah.
entire thing.
So that's true. People were a lot of people were throwing these numbers out at 100%. You're right. I don't think that's accurate, especially in like the native markets case, they say 50%. So it'd be 50% of kind of anything that I just said. But the other 50% would, make sure that growth happens fast and maybe we get to these larger numbers quicker.
But it's
And
also
then I think in the
possible.
longer
Yeah.
term, it's possible that even more yield goes back to the assistance fund versus growth, because at some point you don't need as much liquidity incentives. You can focus more on bringing value back to hype.
I suppose the benefit of having native, because all the other guys have tokens already or they're equity business. I guess the benefit here is you get a multiple of that cash flow in token value potentially airdropped to Hyperliquid stakers.
Of what, like a native markets token, you're saying?
Yeah, like if they win this and they're like, oh, this is great. Like, yeah, we're 50% to Hyperliquid buyback, but the rest of it we're going to use to build the business. Great, but thanks for awarding us with this, contract or whatever.
Yeah, I'm
Sure, we're going to
sure.
launch
I
a
mean,
token plasma style, and here's like
right, it's
30% airdrop.
certainly in the cards. I mean, part of one of their
Interesting.
bullet points on their proposal was we look forward to community ownership in native markets. So, um, surely if they
Yeah.
launch a token, they would do a Hyperliquid aligned kind of airdrop, I would think.
Mm.
Um,
How do you pick out? Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna, I mean, there are more catalysts, I think, to like the revenue stuff is HIP3. Um, I think is a massive one. Equity perps is like, I mean, I think perps are the best financial instrument in the world. Um, I think that there's tons of people in retail who trade equities every day and with kind of shitty products. I think brokerage firms are pretty awful, and 0 day expiration options are not really that great. And like, and you can't hold leverage overnight. Margin is super restrictive. Um, and I just think that, yeah, HIP3 equities are massive potential. I mean, there's other things like pre-IPO markets and prediction markets as well. Um, and just kind of lots of stuff that HIP3 unlocks. And then I think Hyper-EVM as well. I think a lot of people are skeptical on it or don't see how it's that different. And I think that's quite wrong. I think that I would argue it's the opposite. I think no one else is different, and Hyperliquid is the only different L1 because it taps directly into the largest decentralized and one of the largest perps exchanges in the world, um, with a growing spot exchange as well. And with Core Writer and the ability to tap into liquidity directly through an L1, you've all of a sudden completely differentiated yourself from any other L1. So I don't really see why liquidity would live elsewhere. Um, and I think that we're just going to keep seeing more TVL flow into Hyper-EVM for that reason.
Um, there are three venues it seems like you highlighted. There's the share gain on both perp and spot. There's HIP3 optionality, and then there is, if I'm not mistaken, basically Hyper EVM makes the token more like a currency, right? And there's potential value growth for transactional fees. Um,
Mhm.
let's tackle it one by one. We can start with HIP3. When is it coming, you think? And how do you scope out like TAM and just volume and fees to Hyperliquid itself?
Yeah, it's hard to say on a lot of those things. I mean, I think it's been on testnet for a couple months now. I would say I would hope by the end of the year, so in the next like 3 months or so, that we get it live on mainnet. Um, but that's just a guess. I really don't know. Um, there's obviously a lot for them to think about and test there. It's like not it's a pretty big lift. Um, and then how do I think about like fees? It's really just ballpark kind of estimates, and I think it takes time. It takes time to build liquidity for any of these markets. So I think a lot of people actually are probably going to be disappointed with the launch of HIP3, and you're going to see all this FUD on the timeline of like, look, it's doing no volume, and then months later, all of a sudden, volume and liquidity starts to pick up. More market makers come, and you just build this liquidity book, and then once it's liquid enough, there will be a lot of people that trade it. I'll definitely trade tokenized or perps equities. And I think eventually it becomes easily $1 million, $2 million a day business where 50% goes to Hyperliquid. Um, so which can be hundreds of millions of dollars a year in free cash flow. And I think, and not to mention all the ticker auctions as well. So for each of these markets, the HIP3 deployer needs to buy the ticker, the market, and that takes hype off the market forever for however much they bought it for. They also need to stake 1 million hype to be able to enter these markets, which is like another token sink through HIP3.
The outsourcing of the stock perp is not being done by Hype Team itself is a way to circumvent regulatory scrutiny, you think?
Yeah, I think it's partially is to circumvent regulatory scrutiny. Part of it is just bandwidth. Um, it's a Hyperliquid's a small team. They don't want or they don't necessarily have the bandwidth to go and build every single part of the exchange. And then the third is just like being really just generous in a way and allowing other people to participate in this pie and make money from Hyperliquid. Um, and they've kind of just showed this through so many different variations, whether it's builder codes or unit being a spot deployer, or um, anyone can deploy a spot ticker and get their fee share from the I think it's the ticker side, or the ticker side of it. And then HIP3 again, builder codes is probably the biggest one. I mean, there's businesses, and that's another area of growth that I didn't mention either. But there's businesses making like $100,000 a day right now on builder codes, which
Yeah.
is like what, the $30 million a year or something off of the
Yep.
front end. Like that's insane.
I,
And that's pretty generous, I think, to be able to allow for that.
I sort of see builder code as like the way they get from sort of 5 to 6% share, as you mentioned, to 2030, which we'll touch on in a second. Um, it just accelerates the pace you get there. You have 1,000 distribution
Hmm.
touch points. Um, on HIP itself, how do you get to the 1 to 2 million sort of fee per day? Like, it's a little hard for me to wrap my head around kind of the size of that market, just because it would seem like the perp market operators of this new initiative would be tackling um, a different sort of TAM versus this sort of crypto native spot and perp trading, right? It probably won't be Bitcoin. It will be like external Oracle based Tesla shares or something.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
like how do you get to the 1 to 2 million? You think?
I think to me that it's just kind of like a figure in the air, just based on seeing volume and what kind of volume I think I'll expect from these equities. And honestly, I think it's more than that later on. Um, the 1 to 2 million is just kind of like what I think is like what you'll see like 6 months down the line after HIP3 launch. I think early on it's going to be way less. It's going to be like a couple hundred K, and everyone's going to be like, this sucks.
Mm,
But that's just the nature of building a liquid order book. Hyperliquid started slow and eventually got bigger and bigger as liquidity grew. And same with Spot. Hyperliquid Spot launched, and people were like, oh, there's no volume, there's no liquidity. And then now you have an ancient whale doing the largest decentralized swaps ever on Hyperliquid, moving billions of dollars from Bitcoin to ETH. And that took like, what, 5 months or something. So I think it's just kind of like this thing that's going to grow. And really, it's the TAM of this market is enormous. I mean, we're talking about trillions of dollars of equities that it unlocks, and the trading volume in TradFi and like traditional stock markets is way higher than on Hyperliquid, or sorry, than in crypto. So, um, yeah, my fee amount is really just like a proxy for what kind of volume I think we'll see in a few months. It's pretty impossible, I think, to kind of like model it out
yep.
specifically.
And your guess, most of that would come from stock perps, or we don't
I think
know.
that's the biggest opportunity for fees. I think
Mm.
that there's other really interesting markets, but yeah, I would say stock perps is probably the largest one. But then there's also pre-IPO companies like through Ventures. I think that's super interesting. Um, I think prediction markets can be launched on HIP3. It's not perfect
Mm.
for it, but for larger markets and more far out markets, I think it's really good. Um,
Interesting. Um, how do you get to the 20 to 30% share figure for the current hyperliquid market share
well,
versus like the five to
we
six?
were
Yeah.
at we were at 2% in January,
Hmm.
um, and we're at 6% today. Uh, I just don't see it stopping. It's just I think Hyperliquid is just the better product. I think and liquidity and volume has just continued to grow. I mean, liquidity is better that it's just as good as Binance right now for BTC or ETH. And Sol is probably right there as well. Some of the alts maybe not as high in terms of liquidity, but Hyperliquid has passed Bybit and everywhere else in liquidity, and it's really just a game of Hyperliquid versus Binance at this point, which is pretty absurd given Binance is still doing like 7 times more volume in open interest Hyperliquid. So imagine when Hyperliquid bridges that gap even more, the liquidity will probably be even better. Um, and and I just think that there's you're just like Hyperliquid's still so young. Like it's a couple of
Yep.
years old, really, in terms of like users and since it's been live. And this is just a growth story. It takes time to build a business and to get to onboard users and stuff. And I don't see a reason why it can't get 20% market share. I think it goes. I think it can get more.
Yeah, there's an argument about how you get from 0 to 5, 6, 10% just by capturing the low hanging fruit. In the sense that the largest whales are already crypto native, they're very sharp, they're early to things. When you trade, you potentially get an airdrop, so you prioritize venues that are crosses the bar, but also could get you potential additional profit. But the next incremental, 10, 20% market share would involve actually grabbing retail who never touch on chain and
Hmm.
potentially, really building out that user experience. What do you feel about that argument? And do you feel like that's actually a barrier, building out the more retail friendly UI UX to get to that 20, 30%?
Yeah, I mean, I think if all else was equal, that argument makes a lot of sense. And it's a good counterpoint. But I think the flip side is that how you go from 5% to 20% is there's a lot of other product offerings on Hyperliquid that you don't get elsewhere. Um, one of those being kind of the culmination of all these really interesting things that we're talking about, like direct access to Hyper-EVM through Hypercore, HIP3 markets, um, Core Writer, I guess that's through Hyper-EVM. But you're kind of just in this ecosystem that has like all this innovation and stuff like that that you don't really see elsewhere. And you're kind of you have it all there at your fingertips. I think let's see, other ways to kind of compete are, um, hmm, I mean, I think front ends are really a big distribution platform in terms of onboarding like retail that you didn't see before. Because like obviously right now Hyperliquid's more crypto native and a
Mm,
little bit more difficult. And there's
yeah.
not like a crypto native or there's not a Hyperliquid like specific mobile app. So I think seeing front ends kind of build out more. Another thing is Hyperliquid hasn't marketed at all, right? Whereas they literally don't have a marketing team. Whereas these front ends are going to be super incentivized to go and market as much as
Yeah.
possible. Um,
Mm.
Another thing is Hyperliquid fees are lower than elsewhere. Um, so they're literally lower than Binance and wherever else. So that's obviously like attractive. And lastly, I'll just say the UI. I mean, I think the Hyperliquid UI is literally better than any other centralized exchange. Maybe
Yeah.
it's like microseconds slower, but that doesn't bother me. I think it's way more user friendly and more fun to use and there's vaults as well, like you can deposit into HLP, you can the portfolio tab is great, like so many just good things.
Yeah, I mean, I could see outsourcing your liquidity into these, flashier front ends that touch the end customer, right? And then Hyperliquid itself kind of just taking a fee through builder code because we kind of saw it with Phantom and Rabby already.
Yeah,
And
I mean it's all the same liquidity, it's just you're just slapping a front end onto it, but it's accessing the exact same order book.
mm, how long do you think it'll take them to get to like basically 3 to 4x their revenue? And that's not even counting on the organic increase of crypto volume over time. But there's a
Right.
debate there. But I'm kind of curious how long in your mind, when you underwrite this.
3 to 4x, it could take time. um 3 to 4x is a lot from where we currently are. I
Yeah.
think you to get to that threshold, you probably need that mass retail onboarding, which we just haven't seen yet. There's
Mm.
160,000 holders of Hype. There's like I think it's like 600,000 users, it might be, um, versus other exchanges that have, yeah, 670,000 users right now, versus other exchanges that have millions. And I think a lot of that is just like the lack of awareness and lack of these front ends and fiat on ramps also. So fiat on ramps, I think, are going to be probably the biggest solution towards onboarding, I guess, normies or retail users to Hyperliquid. Um, and that likely comes pretty soon. I think that there's conversations with teams. I think this USDH thing will be a big solution to that, and that's obviously is a goal of onboarding retail. Um, and probably you need a little bit more of a craze. Like I think last bull market, or sorry, not last bull market, but we're still in the bull market, guys. Don't worry.
Mm.
Um, last year or whatever, like when things were really crazy with like meme coins and just kind of like the peak mania of the bull market, Hyperliquid was still super nascent. Like it was early stages. TGE hadn't happened yet until like early December, which is kind of the tail end of mania. So that's really often when retail onboarding happens, and Hyperliquid wasn't really around for that. So I think next wave of any sort of mania is when you probably get more of that mass retail onboarding. Um, to answer your question, 3 to 4x, it could take a few years, but I just like I, I I'm less so like looking at this invest in like my projections at like how long it takes to get to these numbers. I'm more so just looking at like what is the current run rate and what kind of multiple is that, and to me it's super low. And then what is the potential that we can get to, and then what does that multiple look like,
Mm.
or what does value look like if we slap a regular multiple on what I think we kind of market share we can get to,
Mm.
and that number is absurd. So whether it takes 5 years to get there or 10, it's really kind of irrelevant because the potential is so large that even if we get halfway there in a few years, you're still looking at an amazing investment. So when we're talking about such large growth, it's really hard to just like project out on like a year to year basis.
Mm.
And yeah, that's it's just not as important, I think, for me to think about it like that.
Yeah, I could see the argument. Uh, it also does come in a bit of a step function. What do you mean the fiat on ramp could get solved on a sooner side with USDH?
Well, I mean, these USDH proposals like are coming from these these companies that have been working on this or that have existing infrastructure to do this, like Paxos and whoever else, like they have all these rails um to plug into banking systems and whatnot. And I know that Native Markets has been working on this as well. So if they're the one to go,
Mm.
like they've been working with Bridge, and I think that a lot of these companies that like Native Markets or whoever else have kind of been working on this in the background and trying to think about ways to do this as like that's part of like the pitch, right? Um,
Mm.
and they were told, the USDH ticker was taken, and no one knew how this was going to play out or that there was going to be a governance proposal or when it was or how fast it would happen. Like kind of all the details were not known, but um, there's been
Mm.
teams that have been working on this and um, I have through other conversations, I think that there's probably other stuff, other potential like people working on fiat on-ramps as well. You kind of just hear
Mm.
through the grapevine and whatnot, um, and it makes sense. Why wouldn't there be to Hyperliquid? Sphere Labs has tweeted about stuff like they're fantastic on and off ramp um, for stable coins, and they work in various markets. And I think with Hyper-EVM, like it's a pretty easy story to tell. It's just a chain. Like
Yeah.
why wouldn't you be able to on ramp to Hyper-EVM? It's just like any other
Mm.
chain. So um,
Got it.
I think it's all coming.
Got it. So basically, organic growth. You thought they were like executing well, so they should just grow in market share with builder code using them, right? And then HIP3, like, um, given the potential candidates that are spinning up perp markets, given the kind of code base, it should also contribute materially to the revenue. Um, before we move on to hyper EVM, I guess the one question that this is the question I struggle with myself is the industry is highly cyclical, and
Mhm.
central exchange volumes could drop 50 to 70% in a bear market. I don't know if we're going into one. Um, I mean, exchanges are cyclical assets by themselves. So could you see a scenario where the fees run rating at current 3 to 5 million does drop by a factor of 5, and with the multiple compression, so like the token could be down quite meaningfully? How do you sort of mentally work around that potential sort of cyclicality if you were to buy
Yeah,
it here at 50? Yeah.
for sure. I mean, when I was writing my valuation pieces, like in January, February, I was being told the same thing, which is that like this didn't make sense because in a bear market, everything's going to drop 50%, right? Um, and at that time in January, average daily fees were like around $1 million a day. And my response then was, well, bear market fees might drop 50%, but I think that we're going to grow market share by 50% or 100%. So it cancels out. And I don't think the answer has really changed. I think we're still seeing incredible growth. We saw 88% quarter over quarter growth. That's incredible for a company doing $1 billion in free cash flow, right? Like any other company on the stock exchange or a tech company would be trading at an absurd multiple with 88% quarter over quarter growth. And we're not even seeing that right now. So to me, we're trading at a pretty fair multiple while growing incredibly fast. Um, in a bear market, maybe we do see some downside. I think 50 to 70% is true. That's kind of like at the lows per my research. And it doesn't, bear market volume kind of lasts for like a year and a half, and then it starts to go back up. So it's like a temporary like decrease. I don't think it's a permanent decrease, assuming that we get a resumed bull market. Um, and I think the other thing is that um, with Bitcoin ETFs, I know people, will meme about like, oh, this time it's different, or whatever, but I do kind of think it's a bit different just in terms of a volume perspective. Um, there's just more money in the system paying attention to this asset, and more volume is going to be traded. And there's just clearly tons of volatility, especially with like the Trump admin, um, just in market volatility in general, which obviously benefits an exchange, and we have that for at least another few years. Um, and then just layer on like what's happening with assets in general. I think that we're just in kind of like a Goldilocks period at the moment where assets probably go up for some time. I mean, we have rate cuts coming. Like, I'm not really out here projecting like a doom or bear case anytime in the next couple of years. So I don't. Yeah, I don't really necessarily need to think about that because I think by then we have such crazy growth as well through Hyperliquid that the underwriting is a fully different analysis by then. And then the last
Got
thing
it.
I'll say is HIP3 and equities. If we do get a bear market, you're getting less trading through crypto people, crypto natives, but a lot of crypto natives in a bear market, they shift to trading other things such as equities. And if we have HIP3 on Hyperliquid, well, guess what? They might not be trading crypto because crypto is shit, but they're going to be trading um, stock perps.
Yeah.
Um, and then last thing is probably if there's any asset in crypto to own during a bear market, it's Hyperliquid. It's the only thing that makes cash flow this kind of cash flow that's going to continue to buy back the token um, during downside. So there's like inherent downside protection as well, and maybe you even see like a multiple premium versus now because of that. Um, so
I
I don't
see.
know, lots of protections, I think.
I see. So your argument basically comes down to because we're at such a nascent stage of the hyperliquid growth curve, the share gain, like market share growing from 6% to 12%, like in a year, given the sort of massive Q and Q growth that we have, plus the optionality in these growth venues, should be enough to offset the drop in volume. With the added benefit, point number two about people could just trade stocks, so like
Hmm.
their share gain could even accelerate. And then your third point is that maybe people are already baking in peak market multiples today, and in a bear market, sort of the multiple will actually expand. So all three things combined, you actually may not drop, like the Hyperliquid price may not drop that much. That's basically the
Yeah.
argument.
Yeah, I think that sums it up well. I wouldn't say I think regarding the multiple, maybe in the next couple months we see a more outsized multiple. I would hope, especially
Mm.
as like we get some DATs launching and stuff, like Hyperliquid should start to trade at like a 40, 50 plus multiple in like a crypto bull market. I think that makes a lot of sense for something growing this fast. And I wouldn't expect the multiple to be expanded versus that during a bear. But for where Hyperliquid is trading right now, which I have it at like a 14, 15 times multiple. Um, Maybe slightly higher now that we've gotten like a 10% move, so 16 times, let's call it. Yeah, I think in a bear market, certainly we can potentially get a bit higher than that.
Hmm. Um, what do you think could grow? This is good background. On Hyper-EVM, what do you think could emerge on this EVM platform that taps into the liquidity and drives significant monetary premium to the Hype token itself?
Um, I think collateral, spot collateral for perps is probably the most obvious one. And it's not being talked about a whole lot right now. I think a lot of people want Hyperliquid to build it natively. We'll
Mm.
see. I would love them to. I'm not sure if they
Yeah, me
will.
too.
Um,
Hmm.
but I know that Hyperlend is working on this, and they announced something a week ago or so. Um, and they're basically working on creating a spot collateral perps market where you can get collateral on all of your spot assets that are, I guess, on EVM probably, yeah, probably on EVM, and use them for perps positions. You know, they still have to go. I talked with Ness from Hyperland, and you know, it's still early days in this. They're going through testing and we'll have to get audits and stuff. So might take some time, make to take a couple months or whatever it is, but they are certainly working on this, and it seems like they have a good idea and path forward on how to do this. And I think that um, portfolio margin for a perp dex doing this kind of volume and flows is would be a huge unlock. And I think that, you know, that's where you start to see maybe like Bitcoin wells and stuff like that that trade on coin margin on some of these centralized exchanges are all of a sudden like, okay, cool, now I can use my Bitcoin coin margin on Hyperliquid. And that's something that like wasn't really available before.
Why don't we have it now?
I think just complexity, in terms of like risk engine, it's really difficult. Um, it's difficult to ensure sane solvency. I think when you start to introduce assets that deviate in price, um, just mathematically, like from a risk perspective, I think that's one of the bigger things. And the team just has so much on their plate, you know, that maybe it's not number one priority.
Mm. So you think for in the foreseeable future, a third party does it, and there will be like a perp market running, maybe along with HIP-3, but it runs in parallel, where you don't just use USDC as collateral. Is that
Well,
the right way to think?
certainly for HIP-3 it's possible, but and I mean we 100% know that that is going to be a thing because you can choose
Yeah.
in HIP-3 you'll be able to choose your pairing asset, right? So you can choose like
Yes.
a hype Bitcoin market or something and then
Yes.
boom, you have, but that's specific to Bitcoin and it doesn't unlock your whole portfolio margin.
Yeah.
Um, the Hyperlend system maybe not won't integrate with HIP-3 yet. I don't know if they've, you know, gone that far, but in terms of the native markets, it seems as it would be on all perps pairs. Um, and to me that's more interesting. Is like the cross collateral aspect of it versus
But
HIP-3 markets and their standalone will just be individual isolated.
but the volume that happens on Hyperliquid will not go through Hyperland. Like people have to actively
Um,
switch.
No, it'd be the perps volume would still go through Hyperliquid. All the perps would be on Hypercore.
Oh, interesting. Oh,
It
okay.
would just be that
Mm.
if you got liquidated, um, Hyperlend would be the one doing the liquidations through Core Writer.
Got it.
You know, like I'm not super in tune with all the mechanics and whatnot, but
Yeah, interesting.
um,
Okay.
it
Okay. I
seems
could see
that
that being.
they've got like a
Mm.
path towards this.
I could see that being very big, actually. And I could also see the Hyperliquid team kind of observing this from afar. It's like, oh, well, if you blow up, we can fix things. That's interesting. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, that might be the biggest unlock in you. When do you think that happens?
I don't know. I know that they announced it recently and they're testing. Next few months maybe. It's hard to say.
Mm. Um, this is really helpful. I want to shift gear a little bit because I still have some stuff to go over.
Mhm.
There are some fun ones. I guess I want to tackle this one first. Uh, maybe before we move on to that, is there anything else that excites you the most right now that is not being discussed by the community, but in particular excites you and you think really moves the needle?
Um, I mean, I think the community has kind of got eyes on. I don't know if I have anything that people aren't talking about that,
Yeah,
but maybe stuff that is not getting enough love. One of them being Son. I think the Son dat coming
yeah,
in like late December is just a massive unlock. I mean, you're talking about some legendary Wall Street guys. You know, Bob Diamond was he was the CEO of Barclays for like 8 years. Um, and David Shamus is like super, super smart and completely gets Hyperliquid. Um, and I think that um, those two guys plus Paradigm is super involved, and Matt Huang is like grown to be a massive investor, not just in crypto but elsewhere. So I think just really powerful backers that understand the Hyperliquid story and are coming out of the gates hot with $300 million of cash, and I think that it's the best story that Wall Street has ever heard in crypto. And we've seen
mm,
some crazy shit happen when Wall Street gets a bite of crypto. You know, we saw Circle, we saw the ETH DATs, we saw MicroStrategy and Bitcoin. Like, what if all of a sudden you're going to start telling these Wall Street funds that there's a asset making $2 billion a year in free cash flow that trades at a 14 times multiple? They're
yeah,
gonna be like, "Are you fucking kidding me? That's not true. No way." And then you're gonna
yeah.
be like, "Yes, it is. Look, you can see it daily." And it's just gonna be like this massive jaw-dropping moment, I think, for Wall Street. So I'm super excited for that.
When do you think they start buying?
Um, It depends. So they put out their S4, which is the merger agreement proposal, like a week or two ago. And that's under SEC review. So SEC will have to give comments on that, and then they'll iterate. That might take, a month or two. And then after the S4 gets approved by the SEC, it goes on to shareholder vote for the SON shareholders. And then I think that's like a 30-day process. And once it gets approved by the shareholders, then it's probably like a 1 to 2 week turnaround and for closing and listing and getting the cash in the bank to be able to start buying. So anywhere from 2 to 4 months. So like late November would probably be the earliest, or sometime early January would be the later phase. Targeting around December is kind of my guess and what I've understood from the timeline.
Mm. And you did do I think a Twitter space with them, right? With Monk
I
from
did, yeah.
Synchronicity. Yeah.
Yep.
With that like space, you probably also spoke with them, in real life or over a Zoom call. Um, you mentioned that they get it. I'm guessing there are multiple factors to this. Do you think they do other stuff beside from just buying hype? Like, do you think they'll, like run with, like, do you think there's other stuff they would do? And secondly, do you think they will just, I'm guessing they will do non-deal roadshows across all the largest kind of buy side firms and just shill this thing. Like, what do
Yeah,
you
that's
think?
the hope.
That, yeah,
I
I know.
think,
Tell me.
yeah.
Mm,
I hope they market super hard and do like a full roadshow. I mean, I don't have visibility into like what all that looks like.
mm,
I would love to get like kind of under the ropes and see that. But um,
mm.
I imagine that they're gonna have, a deck on Hyperliquid, and they're gonna go through and they're gonna go pitch this and field questions and stuff. And I think it's just gonna be, like I said, a massive revelation. Um, and I hope that I think they have potential to raise so much more than what they're initially coming out with. Um,
Have they mentioned to you how much they want to raise beyond the
No, I mean
300?
we talked about it. They said on the spaces that I hosted, they said as long as they're trading above MNAV, they're gonna aggressively try to raise more money to buy more hype.
Okay.
Um, and I
Mm.
think they'll be able to. I don't really see how they can't, given what we've seen in other DATs and how much better of a story this really is to TradFi. Um,
Yeah.
and then in terms of how they'll deploy it, HIP3 and stuff, we'll see. They said that they do want to stake their hype, and maybe like they'll pursue other types of opportunities that make sense from a risk reward perspective. So I'm sure they'll look into it. I don't think they'll do anything crazy though, given like just the type of money that this is and the size and stuff. So probably just
Mm,
staking is what we can expect for now, and then maybe they get a little clever with certain partnerships and stuff.
yeah, that makes sense. Um, this is a big debate point. I think people talked about. I mean, hype is 33% circulating, and then there's a
Hmm.
big team portion. There's a big portion that is due for unlock over time through ecosystem, potential airdrop, season 2, 3, 4, 5, and whatnot. You mentioned like 14 to 16 times, price to free cash flow and burn. Is that only on the circulating amount? And why aren't you counting the management amount, which is, relevant even to listed companies? I mean, I get that argument about um, the ecosystem inflation over time is very similar to stock-based comp and whatnot. But are you including the management portion in your free cash flow calculation?
So with the multiple that I mentioned, that to me, that the way that I have it, and anyone can see on like my page,
Yep.
I've kind of broken things out. I might change my pin tweet to the hype to 1,000. I think I've changed my numbers a bit. Um,
Yep.
that's kind of the one that I would say that's the most recent and most up to date. Um, and the way that I look at it is I do a blend of circulating and what I call adjusted fully diluted. Neither of those figures include the future emissions, nor burned tokens or assistance fund buybacks.
Mm.
Um, so really, I mean, burn tokens obviously not; those are burned forever. Assistance fund buybacks. I mean, look, anyone who knows this team understands that those are not coming back into circulation, unless they're maybe eventually through staking or something. But there's no dumpage fund here. This is the assistance fund. So HIP and assistance fund buybacks, I take those out. And then unclaimed airdrop tokens I take out as well, because those are going to future emissions. And the reason I take out future emissions is because to me, this is really staking rewards. It accounts for over 40% of the total supply. I really do not see a massive airdrop coming again. I don't see why they would. I don't see the need to. And Hype has a fixed supply, unlike a lot of proof of stake tokens that have kind of infinite supply, um, like Solana, for example. Um, Hype has a fixed supply, meaning if it wants to continue to give staking rewards and secure the network for its future, it needs to have a large reserve to be able to give those staking rewards into perpetuity. So I really think that these are staking rewards, and if someone wants to make the argument that they're for an airdrop, then that's an argument they can make, and I'll I think, but to me, if there is an airdrop, it's probably no more than another 5 to 10%. I don't know. That's kind of my understanding and how I think about it.
Mm.
And then regarding team tokens, that's the reason I use the blended multiple is I'm
Yep.
basically taking the team supply at half is effectively what I'm doing. Um, and that's because the team supply is about 30%, which in its current state is um, let's see. It's like $15 billion or something.
Yep.
Um, I really do not think that $15 billion of team supply is getting released into the ecosystem over the next 2 to 3 years. That's just a ridiculous amount. It's a very small team. I think that the way that things are phrased is that these are also for future team members, and Jeff is building this for 50 to 100 years plus. You know what I mean? This is the Hyperliquid. The goal of this exchange and what Jeff's vision is like this is a very long-term project. This is not like he's trying to make money and leap. So I think that this team supply is really reserved for many, many years. Um, and
Mm.
and because of that, you need to look at it in a way that is more akin to how stocks are looked at, which is the stock-based compensation.
Yep.
Um, you underwrite any public company, and stock-based compensation is hundreds of, like, these CEOs and management are getting hundreds of millions of dollars a year. Um, of SBC, which is minted shares that are not included in the token in the share supply in current state. So whereas Hyperliquid has a fixed supply, so these team tokens are the most that they'll ever be. So I think that in order to have like an apples to apples comparison of a multiple, you need to somewhat adjust your the Hyperliquid team supply such that it's leaked out over many years. And the
Mm,
last thing I'll say about the multiple, which I don't include in my analysis, but it's just kind of another thought, is this is 99% of free cash flows going back to buyback hype. Um, this free cash flow that we're looking at is not taxed, right? It's
yep.
immutable in the protocol. It goes straight to buybacks. Whereas free cash flow or EBITDA that people will look at in stock markets, that's subject to 21% tax rate, corporate tax. So immediately off the bat, you have a multiple that should be trading actually at a 20% premium versus stocks just because of that. Um, so yeah, I think people are just overly punitive and are not really looking at um, valuation in the right way for
Mm.
Hyperliquid.
I think that's fair. And just so I understand, so taking out all the burns and the buybacks, and then taking out the community portion, and then taking out half of the management's ownership, uh, you get to maybe 540 million of tokens. That is kind of the
Yep.
current shares outstanding. Um, and then which will get to like a billion less the buyback over time. Um, I'm guessing that's an annual like I'm guessing that's like an annual inflation rate of maybe like 50 to 100 million tokens every. Is that the right way to think about this? Like a 10% kind of quote unquote stock based comp expense? Is that roughly correct? You think?
50 to 100 million tokens a year.
Yeah, like kind of being emitted to team, to community, and whatnot.
Well, okay, so I think the community one is not relevant in my opinion because that's staking rewards,
Mm-hmm.
which as a holder and investor, you're receiving those rewards, so it's net zero on dilution.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for team rewards, there's 300 mil total. I mean, really, I think that there's probably more released early on, but I think
Mm-hmm.
that you likely see these tokens staked. I really do not expect the team to just dump them. Um, but I think it's really more like this 300 mil, or actually for my adjusted figure, I'm already including 150 mil in the figure, right? So
Yep.
let's assume that that's already unlocked in this moment.
Mm.
And then you need to think about what's the leakage for the next 50 years, let's say. So it's the 150 mil divided by 50 years, um, and now you have a number that is 3 million tokens a year of leakage, which in current state, that's $150 million a year. Um,
Mm-hmm.
for team funds, for new hires and whatever else. I think that's a
Mm-hmm.
lot,
Yeah.
and it's not they don't even need that. So um, it's just it all when you really just put the numbers to paper, it seems almost ridiculous to ever think that like this amount will be dumped by this team that has such
Yeah.
strong ethos and whatnot. And then
Yeah.
also I think a lot of people think about like they're scared of the flows and stuff. But regardless of the flows, like we're looking at a company that makes this much money a day or a year, and we're looking at the total valuation, even if you include all those tokens. So it's kind of irrelevant from a valuation perspective, um, to think about these flows. The flows is more of like that's like you're playing like a trading game or a DAT game of like, oh, you're trying to front run flows or whatnot. But in terms of valuation, flows per day or whatever shouldn't change the analysis, I think.
Makes sense. And then once you run the math with the current run rate revenue or the burn, you get to like maybe you said it's like 16 to 18 times burn. Is that roughly correct today?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you're using for your fee number. So using August fees, which average was 3.67 million a day, um, you get and current price is what like 50. 53
Yeah.
um, with this 542 million dollar
Yeah.
adjusted share count, and then we take, the blend. I'm at a 16.7 times multiple. Um, for a hyper growing business in a super exciting space that has all these catalysts and stablecoin and all these things to come. So to me, it's still very cheap. And that's
And
crazy to think about, to sit here and underwrite a crypto token that's, you know, 50 billion FDV or whatever, trading at a 17 times multiple. Never in my life that I think I would see this.
yeah, and you're benchmarking it to like the EV/EBITDA of Coinbase and Hood, which is like 35 to 70 times basically LTM.
Yeah.
And there's maybe like 2x upside, and that's how you get to like 100, 150, 200 price target kind of.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, if we start to trade at 30, at those similar multiples, all of a sudden, does a 2 to 3x without even increasing cash flow. And then
Yeah.
you increase cash flow by 2x, and now you're at a 6x, and all of a sudden you're at a $300 price target with not a whole lot of
Hmm.
crazy assumptions. And I think the other thing also with these price targets is we're taking off so much supply per year. I mean, the assistance fund has taken off over 10% of circulating supply in less than a year. It's taken off over 3% of total supply, but total supply doesn't even really matter that much because of all these emissionary tokens that are going to be released over time. So 10% of circulating supply a year, I mean, you do that for a few years in a row while trading at a depressed multiple.
Yep.
Um, and now price you just took so much off the market forever, that's now your fixed token supply is way lower, and you start to get to this path of these multi-$100 targets over the next 5 to 10 years that look a lot easier to achieve.
Mm. What do you think? What do you think happens when unit get hacked? Get hacked?
If unit gets hacked,
Yeah.
um well, that would suck. um
Yeah, that would suck. Yeah, that would suck.
let's see, I mean, there would be, it depends what gets hacked. I imagine all of their like Guardian networks are separated. So you have the Bitcoin one, Solana one, etc. I don't know the exact amounts for each of those. Probably Bitcoin is the largest one.
Yep.
Um, you lose maybe if a unit loses maybe a few $100 million in backing of Bitcoin, and anyone who owns Bitcoin on Hyperliquid or Hyper-EVM, um, their BTC becomes um, worthless. Um, that would be very unfortunate. I don't know what the decision would be then. Um, I don't know if there would be time to freeze things. Um, I don't know. I mean, I don't think it eliminates Hyperliquid because of that. We're talking about a project that should be worth $100 billion, and if it loses a few hundred mil to a hack, um, I don't think that puts a coffin in it. There's ways to fund that back to users, or whether it's through the assistance fund, or some sort of like community investment, or I don't really know. I
Yeah.
don't know if there's a way to freeze like the I don't, I'm not sure if there would be time to like freeze the chain, or what it would, or what if any of that would be possible through validator vote. Um, and then also, I don't know, just I
Yeah.
think Unit is a really good team. Shoku's incredible. I have all the trust in the world for him to have built something super strong and resilient, and um, let's hope that never happens.
Um, if it does happen, like, do you think they sell the assistant fund hype to sort of fund the lost funds?
I wouldn't say it would be sold. I don't think there's enough like liquidity in the market
Mm.
to just do that, and there would be a lot of panic happening in the moment.
Yep.
Um, I'd hope other solutions could happen first, such as like validator vote to freeze things, or maybe Unit has plenty of precautions in place for any of this. Um, I think worst case would be a hype airdrop from the assistance fund or from community reserves. Either way, I guess it doesn't really matter. It
Right.
would be a hype airdrop to those that are affected with the equivalent amount like USD denominated amounts. And that way
Because
they're still owning this crypto and they're less likely to just go and dump that because it's like, okay, I got my crypto exposure back, but it's in Hype instead of Bitcoin. Um,
they
I think
would
that's
almost
worst
certainly
case.
dump it, right? Like, oh, they will almost certainly sell it to Bitcoin because they want Bitcoin.
I mean, probably. Never know.
Yeah. Because
Um,
and here's the thorny issue because unit, technically speaking, is not Hyperliquid. Like, do you
that
think
that was
Hype
going to be my
itself?
next point.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that I don't know what happens because it's not really Hyperliquid's responsibility necessarily. This is a separate team acting, and that's why maybe it doesn't even that maybe that wouldn't even happen. I can't I can only speculate on these things and think about out loud what would happen, but who
I
knows?
mean,
I mean,
it just seems like if that
Jeff's a lot
happens,
smarter than me, so I
yeah.
trust
Do
him.
you feel like Hype gets zeroed out in that situation? Because like there's
No,
significant
I
trust lost in the
there
platform.
is I don't think so. Bybit got hacked for 1.5 billion. Um, they're fine.
Yeah, but
Like
that's because
there's
they paid everybody back in full. And in this case, Unit is separate from Hyperliquid. Like Hype basically has to pony up the money and pay everybody back in full, suffer a period of potentially less trading. Like the fees would drop meaningfully, and there's this overhang of potential Hype selling. I'm just kind of curious because this is a real risk. I would imagine, like no matter how much we trust a team, I'm just
but
kind of
it's
curious. Yeah,
this risk is not really any different than centralized exchange risk. It's not
absolutely.
you don't have right?
Yeah,
It
yeah,
is or
and
isn't?
those. Oh, of course, it's no different. And those exchange
Yeah,
coins would drop, materially, during those period of
yeah,
times.
yeah. So I think it's similar to thinking about if Coinbase got hacked or Binance got hacked. I mean, maybe
Hmm.
you could argue their infrastructure is better, but I don't necessarily know if that's for sure. Um,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, it's very similar. I mean, people think about, oh, it's wrapped Bitcoin or something, but that's exactly what it is when you're on a centralized exchange too.
Hmm.
The Bitcoin in your wallet on a centralized exchange that's paper Bitcoin. That is just front end Bitcoin. That is not in your wallet. That is all in their wallet, and they issue like they give you some fake front end like one-to-one token basically that to you looks like Bitcoin, but it's all in their wallet, and if they get hacked, you're screwed. Um, so yeah, I don't know. It's a risk with any exchange business, I guess, in crypto. It's definitely like something to consider, and it is an edge case. It would suck. I don't think Hyperliquid gets zeroed out, though. I think that um, there would be enough people and enough support by large players and people that own a lot of hype and things like that to find a way to pull together money um, to take care of those that are affected. And if that's through hype or what or whatever it is, it's still a small amount, I think, at this moment in terms of like TVL of let's say Bitcoin on the
Hmm.
exchange versus the FTV of the exchange and how much it makes on like an annualized basis and stuff.
Mm. It would seem like if I were to play out the scenarios, like the trading would take a dive, like take a drop in trading volume. People would kind of freeze and kind of observe what
Yeah,
happens. It's
for
likely
sure.
that Hype would get, so there might be an overhang. If there's no overhang, they probably will have this promissory note of sorts that like make those guys in whole in Bitcoin terms, if I have to guess,
Yep,
which
yep,
takes
over
away the
time.
buyback. Yeah, over time, which basically no, I don't know. They have to like really navigate this,
Yeah,
and then people assess kind of what's going on with the Hype platform, and then maybe like it almost certainly drop
it
depending
would
on
no
activity. Yeah.
doubt be a huge hit to valuation, and it would take a lot of time to dig
Yeah.
themselves out of it.
Mm.
Um, you would see huge withdrawals,
Yeah.
outflows and reduced trading volume, and I think actually, yeah, what you said makes sense. The kind of a promissory is similar to what we had seen in like previous Bitcoin hacks. I forgot the most prominent one. Um,
Mm.
issue
Hmm.
like a separately traded token for redemption. What's that? There's a token that did that. I can't remember the name.
Yeah, Bifinix, but I think it's like
Yeah,
a bird that they didn't have a token then. That's funny. Interesting. Because you're the closest to it. I'm just kind of because this topic was brought up quite a bit from my conversation with others, and we're kind of
mm,
speculating what Hyperliquid would do, just because Unit is like a separate team. Like they could very well pay
yeah,
nothing.
yeah, possible.
Okay. Okay. So we don't know. This is really helpful. I guess that last question, we
May-
kind of
may-
ran
may-
over
may- may-
time.
may- I mean,
Yeah,
maybe it's Unit's responsibility, and Unit doesn't have a token yet, and they raise
that's
money in
true.
private market, and they raise money in private markets
That
and
is
give
true.
up a lot of share of their business, and they make people
Mm,
whole, you know?
mm.
There's there's been cases of this before, Wormhole getting bailed out by Jump and stuff. I think thankfully there's been a lot less large crypto hacks in recent years, um,
I could see that. I could see
for whatever
Paradigm kind of
reason.
putting in $1 billion and Shoku kind of coughing up equity, and then
Exactly.
just like make people whole. I could see that.
Yep.
Hmm.
Yep.
Um, I think the folks who watch this are already very smart with Hyperliquid, and you know, and we've kind of covered all the topics that people who own Hype kind of already know. You are obviously one of the deepest guys in this narrative. I guess when you talk to people like myself who kind of are a little farther away, or from folks that have done the research but don't own it, what do you think is still the most like misunderstood about this narrative? That kind of the last question.
Uh, Probably just the general valuation, just like what the current multiple is, and why it demands a much higher one.
Mm,
Um, I would say I think that's probably the biggest one. Um, and that's I mean that's for a number of reasons, just not factoring in growth for whatever it is, like all these various catalysts and stuff. I think another one I had mentioned this earlier, but was Son, just like fun, just flows from TradFi and people finally recognizing what hype is. I
mm,
think one is the token distribution. There's still only 170,000 holders of hype. That is minuscule. There are hundreds of meme coins on Solana with more holders than that. And when you have small distribution, it's quite hard to bring an asset to be worth, 50 or 16 plus billion dollars. Um, but and that's part of why the multiple I think is still suppressed and why it feels so cheap to me. And um, that kind of gets resolved with more distribution outlets and fiat on ramps and front ends.
mm.
And I think people that are not as bullish, I guess, as me is just or what they don't fully get is just the complete vision and why this is like such a revolution. Like this is just unlike anything we've ever seen. If you've been in crypto for years, you've seen a million things come in and out the door.
Yep.
Nothing makes cash flow like this. Nothing has had a team with this kind of really brilliance across the board, not just like technically, but also like game theory wise and understanding the business of things and how to create an ecosystem for everyone. Um, and just kind of all Hyperliquid is like the blockchain to house all finance. Like it, Shoku had put something out a while ago, and it's basically like I forgot what it was, but it was a thread. It was an article on which is basically like the last is the best, effectively, which is that like it's last mover advantage, I think is what it was called. And it's that, and I'll look for the link and I'll send it to you because it's really interesting. Um,
Hmm.
it's just basically the idea that like a lot of people think that first mover advantage is better, but Hyperliquid has last mover advantage in that it's been able to see over the years all these things that have come out, and it's been able to design something perfectly by taking notes and account of everything that it's seen over the years and really just create the final end boss product. And we've seen that in traditional businesses as well, like MySpace to Facebook and things like that. Um, I know I said a lot of reasons here, but I think there really just are a lot of things and reasons that are misunderstood. And it's really just kind of the amalgamation of all of that and just like the underappreciation for like how incredible this team is and what this full vision really looks like at max speed and at max capacity. Um,
Mm.
and I think Hyperliquid, if there's any chance we have in crypto, it's Hyperliquid. So that's what gets me so excited about it.
Yeah. Um, I could see that. Um, Really helpful, Keisan. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.